Hey, what is up guys? My name is David Lee and I'm Asian with Hat, and I wanted to talk about Crytek's. This is more of in response to my friend, E-House from Gun Gamers, and it's in addition to some of the things that he's talked about in his video, everything that is wrong with Crytek according to a Crytek user. Now, as you guys don't know, I've been using Crytek's for about 2.5 years now, essentially exclusively. I ran the Crytek Block 2 and my Crytek Mark 18, and then I also have a Crytek M16 Shrike, or as what you guys like to know as the LMG. With that, I put down definitely more than 100,000 rounds through all my airsoft guns. And that is actually very noteworthy, as with the 2.5 years that I've had, I can definitely tell you a lot of things, a lot of great things. But for now, I'm going to talk about the negatives and some of the faults and things that Crytek I'm hoping can improve on with what I'm about to tell you guys. Let's first talk about the lower receiver, as a lot of people in the Crytek groups like to complain about saying so the lower receiver. Now, if you guys don't know, the AR-15 has a weak point, and this is not just the airsoft guns. I'm talking about the 223, the 5.56 AR-15, or M4, M16, whichever you want to call it. If you guys don't own an AR-15, an AR-15 has a trigger group. It doesn't have a gearbox. There's definitely a lot more material in the lower receiver because they don't have to cram a bigger box into the lower receiver. They just have to work with a trigger group. A gearbox shell in an airsoft gun takes up a lot of space, so much that you have very little to work with for saying so material and thickness on the lower receiver. So airsoft guns do tend to break more than AR-15s. They are definitely not mil-spec. They do not hold up to military standards unless you own a Systema PTW. I can definitely tell you guys that the Crytek is still as susceptible to any other airsoft gun breaking at the lower receiver right here. So, in my opinion, are these lower receivers from Crytek easier to break? No. I've tried, or I wouldn't say I've tried to, but I fell onto my lower receiver or onto my Block 2 a long time ago down at a warehouse I used to play at. I weigh 150 pounds, wore my plate carrier, wore my helmet, and I fell straight onto my lower receiver, onto my airsoft gun. I didn't break my lower receiver, but I broke the buffer ring. That's another thing I'll tell you guys about right now. I'm not a big fan of the buffer ring, but I also understand why the buffer ring is designed to break a lot more easily than the generic airsoft buffer rings. The buffer rings that are on the Crytek's are about the size of a penny, the thickness-wise. All my Crytek's, aside from my LMG, with saying so a thicker or a standard-sized buffer ring for my buffer tube. That way, I don't have to have a broken buffer ring in the future, and then I had to have downtime or have to go swap to another airsoft gun. Let's talk about the motor. The motor, a lot of people talk about, and they will swap the Crytek motor because they think it's weak. Well, here's the thing. It is a 22 TPA motor. It's still a neo-magnet motor. I know that a friend has said that it's a ferrite motor, and he actually corrected himself after he realized. And it's actually a neo-magnet motor. Now, it's not the strongest neo-magnet motor, but the reason for that is because Crytek decided that they would rather have durability than have strength. And I'll tell you guys right now, I use a BTC Spectre in my Mark 18 and my Block 2. I use it almost exclusively, aside from my Shrike. My Shrike, I don't need it. I use max braking and I use pre-caulking. Max braking does do a lot of damage to the motor. I have started to notice that the Crytek motors are starting to get weak, but it's been 2.5 years. That's a really great investment to have for the fact that I've never had to upgrade the motors. So it's a worthwhile investment to keep your motors as long as you can until they break. Long story short, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Trying to install a BTC Spectre is a big pain, at least initially for me. The Airsoft tech has said that it took him about an hour and a half. For me, it took about 30 minutes, and that's just more or less just trying to rush it. And this has to do with saying so a wall that routes the wires, and a little bit of a mound that has to do with saying so your selector switch. And it's literally right over here at the gearbox shell, and it's on the right side specifically. And so I had to Dremel off a little bit of the mound, and I had to Dremel off about, I want to say, about 10 millimeters off the wall, the whole wall, and I had to collapse that portion to actually install the BTC Spectre. I think that with Crytek, because they wanted these guns to be a lot more acceptable with V2 accessories or V2 upgrades or aftermarket parts, that I think they need to work with trying to give that room so that way you can actually install BTC Spectres. Another fault, and I say it's a fault, but it's another proprietary point on the Crytek gearbox shell itself, is saying so where the spur and the sector gear is. If you were to drop in an aftermarket gear set, saying so a SHS 12-to-1s or Siege Techs, you would either have to Dremel down the gearbox shell, which I'm not a big fan of because I had to work with bushings or bearings. So it's not a good idea to do that. So what I had to do was I had to get a guy to actually Dremel down enough on the spur gear, and I think he had to do the sector gear just to fit into the gearbox shell. But that's a huge hassle because you have to deal with steel. Steel is not that easy to actually cut down. I would hope that Crytek can actually figure a way to either have it flat, flush on the gearbox shell, so that way we don't have to deal with saying so having to Dremel down your shaft on your spur gear or your sector gear. So just take note of that if you guys are wanting to do aftermarket stuff with your Crytek. Overall, you shouldn't really need to actually upgrade your Crytek unless you are an upgrade junkie like me, where I prefer to have a BTC Spectre, have low ratio gears. I love trigger response. I love trigger response. I can't tell you guys how much I love it. And I'll just display it right here. So with that, that's my trigger response. It's a very, very light trigger response. It's a very quick, but the trigger pull on it is very light. As you can see, I don't have a lot of pull required, as you see from there. And so with that, and that is because of the switch with the BTC Spectre. I love that switch. And you can actually find the sweet spot in here to actually find a fast trigger response. So with that, guys, I really do like having aftermarket stuff in my gearbox. And so that's one thing that I hope that Crytek can actually fix in their next generation gearbox, rumored to be saying so the Poseidon series. I would like them to actually fix some parts of the gearbox so that way it's a lot more susceptible to actually having upgradable parts in there outside of compression parts. Like I've said before, I put down a lot of rounds through all my Cryteks, specifically the Strike. I put down a lot of things in that Strike, but one thing that I'll say about the Strike, the weak point that is on the M16 Strike from Crytek is saying so the box mag. Crytek, in my opinion, is very due for an upgrade. And the reason for that is because I've had a lot of jams with the box mag in the last couple months. I definitely had a jam that wasn't notable because it didn't happen again until now, this year. That jam happened about, I want to say about December 2015, where the box mag jammed and I had to break it down on the field, dump out all the BBs that were jamming the box mag, and then filled it up. But that took about 30 minutes, and it was just not fun. And I had to do that again at D14 at Dagestan, and I believe a day that I chose to actually take it out. And then it happened twice at American Millstones Broken Home 6. So I'm hoping that Crytek will actually fix their box mag, and I'm sure that they've heard a lot of complaints about the box mag having some jams. So hopefully Crytek will actually fix the problems with it. And I think I've found a remedy to it, but I'm not sure because I haven't had enough time to actually shoot my Crytek's LMG. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. And if you guys can, please like the video if you liked it. Or if you guys disliked it, please dislike the video. It just helps out with some things that I could improve on. And if you guys can, please subscribe to Asian with Hat and also hit the new bell button. It actually helps with notifications when I upload a new video. This is David Lee from Asian with Hat signing out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.